Remember when a Hawaiian shirt counted as professional attire and crime solving required more Ferrari rides than paperwork? That's the magic Tom Selleck brought to Magnum PI, transforming what could have been just another detective show into the ultimate 80s fantasy. Today, we're uncovering 10 things you probably never knew about the show that convinced us Paradise came with a mustache and a very fast car. But before we fire up the Ferrari, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. We really do appreciate it. Need a refresher? Magnum PI ran from 1980 to 1988, starring Thomas Magnum, Navy vet turned private eye, living every guy's dream in Hawaii. With TC flying the chopper, Rick holding down the nightclub, and Higgins keeping him in check, Magnum solved crimes in style, usually behind the wheel of Robin Masters' Ferrari. So throw on your shades, here are 10 facts that had everyone ready to swap their 9-to-5 for life in paradise. Number 10. Tom Selleck lost on the dating game twice.
It's a tough break for Tom, but can you imagine how she feels today?
The right height, isn't it?
Before Tom Selleck became the epitome of 80s cool, he faced the ultimate humiliation, getting rejected on national television. At just 20 years old, Selleck went on The Dating Game in 1965, clean-shaven and still years away from that iconic mustache. He came back 2 years later for a second shot, and lost again. Can you imagine being the contestant who passed up the future Magnum PI? That's like tossing out a winning lottery ticket because you didn't like the numbers. The guy who would turn Hawaiian shirts and mustaches into fashion statements couldn't even score a date on a game show. The silver lining? Those rejections saved us from a timeline where Tom Selleck became a game show regular instead of Thomas Magnum. And let's be honest, that's a timeline none of us want to live in. Number 9. The show made syndicated TV history.
Like I said, funny the things a grown man will do for a living. But I've done funnier.
When Magnum PI wrapped in 1988, most shows fade into reruns quietly. But Magnum did the opposite. It exploded in syndication, and for nearly a decade, was the top-rated one-hour drama in rerun history. Until 1998, no other show could touch it. That means an entire generation of viewers got their daily dose of Tom Selleck in Hawaiian shirts long after the finale aired. For kids, it became the ultimate sick day companion. You'd stay home from school, flip on the TV around 4 p.m., and there was Magnum, tearing across Oahu in Robin Masters' Ferrari. Adults, meanwhile, found it the perfect wind-down after work. Easy to jump into, no complicated plots to keep track of, just sun, surf, and a mustache that carried its own gravitational pull. The brilliance of Magnum PI in syndication was its accessibility. Each episode stood on its own, packed with action, charm, and the kind of escapism TV was built for in the pre-streaming age. It was comfort television before we even had a name for it. And remember, this was an era when syndication wasn't filler. It was big business. Stations relied on reruns to draw massive afternoon audiences, and Magnum dominated those time slots like Tom Selleck dominated men's grooming trends. For almost 10 years, it wasn't just a show you watched, it was the show you couldn't avoid. And honestly, who would want to? Number 8. Selleck almost became a professional baseball player. Plot twist: before he was dodging bullets in Hawaii, Tom Selleck was dodging fastballs. Believe it or not, Selleck was actually drafted by the Oakland A's in 1967. He was in college at the time, and while he had the athletic chops, he chose to pursue acting instead of chasing the majors. Good call, because otherwise, Magnum might have just been another name in a baseball stat sheet. Now, here's where it gets confusing. In 1991, long after Magnum PI had made him a household name, Selleck suited up with the Detroit Tigers during spring training. He was preparing for his movie Mr. Baseball, and even got an at-bat in an exhibition game against the Cincinnati Reds.
All arranged that he was going to face Dibble, and Sparky said, "Please don't throw one at him."
He struck out, but honestly, who cares? The men looked cooler whiffing than most pros did hitting doubles. Imagine the alternate timeline where Tom Selleck chose baseball instead of acting. Sure, we'd have gotten some incredibly photogenic baseball cards. That mustache alone would have been Hall of Fame material. But we would have missed out on Magnum cruising Oahu in a Ferrari. His love for the Tigers carried over into Magnum PI, too. That iconic Detroit Tigers cap wasn't just a costume piece. It was Selleck showing off his genuine fandom. It's the kind of authentic detail that made Magnum feel real, even when the rest of the show was completely larger than life. Like solving crimes while looking runway ready in a Hawaiian shirt.
Number 7. The Ferrari became a character itself. Let's be honest, Magnum's red Ferrari 308 GTS wasn't just a car. It was basically the fifth member of the cast. It got more screen time than most guest stars, and some fans would argue it had more charisma than half the villains. By the mid-80s, the car had become so closely tied to Magnum that it was practically shorthand for TV luxury and wish fulfillment. Every suburban dad watching at home had to wonder, could I pull off that private investigator lifestyle if I just had the right set of wheels? But here's the thing about television magic. That wasn't one car. Over the course of the series, the crew rotated through multiple Ferraris. Some were used for close-ups, others for everyday driving scenes, and a few were designated for the rougher stunt work. These weren't props sitting idle on a studio lot. They were working Ferraris that had to handle Hawaiian roads, unpredictable weather, and the occasional chase sequence. The Ferrari wasn't just transportation, it was pure aspiration on wheels. It embodied the dream that Magnum PI was selling, that life could be an adventure, that work didn't always have to feel like work, and that the best office might just be wherever you parked your car. In the end, Magnum's 308 wasn't just Italian engineering. It was the American dream, painted bright red and framed by a Hawaiian sunset. Number 6. Higgins had more war stories than actually possible.
You mean for the next week, I'm going to have to live in this squalor with... I found it!
John Hillerman's Higgins was the undisputed king of improbable war stories. As the ex-British Army Regimental Sergeant Major, he carried himself with the kind of stern discipline you'd expect from a man who had seen it all. And according to Higgins, he really had seen it all. From desert battles in North Africa to jungle combat in Burma, he seemed to have fought in nearly every major conflict of the 20th century. The problem? If you actually did the math, Higgins would have needed to clone himself just to keep up. One week, he'd casually reference serving with Montgomery in the desert. The next, he'd drop a story about clandestine operations in Asia. Either he was the busiest soldier in British military history, or the writers were just having fun finding new excuses for Hillerman to deliver long-winded tales in that impeccably crisp accent. The best part was that fans caught on. Viewers began cataloging his military resume episode by episode, almost like a geography lesson in impossible deployments. But instead of hurting the character, the contradictions became part of his charm. In a series where a private investigator in a Hawaiian shirt could crack international conspiracies between Ferrari rides, it somehow made sense that his nemesis had fought in every theater of World War II. And speaking of impossible stories, before we continue our countdown, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We've got plenty more nostalgic 80s content ahead, and trust me, you won't want to miss it.
Number 5. The show pioneered product placement. Magnum PI didn't just feature tropical scenery and flashy stunts. It helped pioneer a new era of product placement on television. The Ferrari 308 wasn't just a cool ride, it was a lifestyle statement, and, in many ways, one of the most effective ads ever put on TV. Magnum didn't just drive a car, he drove that car. And it told viewers everything about his freedom, success, and style. This was groundbreaking for the 1980s television. Before Magnum, product placement often stuck out like a neon sign, a character holding up a soda can, or awkwardly praising a brand in dialogue. But Magnum integrated products seamlessly into the storytelling. The Ferrari became shorthand for adventure. The Hawaiian shirts embodied the island vibe. And even the Detroit Tigers cap was a perfect character touch that doubled as subtle brand exposure. What made it work was the authenticity. Magnum never stopped mid-chase to explain why his Ferrari was superior. He just tore across Oahu, looking fantastic while doing it. Viewers connected the dots themselves. It was advertising so smooth you barely noticed it was happening. Exactly like Magnum's investigative style.
effortless, clever, and impossible not to watch.
Number 4, Tom Selleck's mustache has its own Hall of Fame plaque. This one is completely real and completely spectacular. Tom Selleck's legendary mustache has been immortalized in the International Mustache Hall of Fame, run by the American Mustache Institute. His official digital plaque reads, "Throughout his acting career, Selleck's charismatic grin, unflinching masculinity, and robust, stocky lip holstery have..." Yes, they actually used the word lip holstery. And yes, this is a real Hall of Fame dedicated solely to mustaches. It sounds absurd, but it's also entirely deserved. Selleck's mustache didn't just define a character, it defined an entire era. It was perfectly groomed without looking fussy, masculine without being overbearing, and somehow made every other mustache on television look like it was trying too hard. It was the Goldilocks of facial hair. Not too much, not too little, but exactly right for selling the fantasy of a private investigator in paradise. And in a way, the induction feels like the perfect capstone to Magnum PI's legacy. Some actors are remembered for their Emmy wins or their blockbuster movies. Tom Selleck's mustache earned its own museum-level recognition. Only in the 1980s could facial hair become a cultural icon, and only Tom Selleck could make it happen. Number 3, the show's creators had serious military credentials.
My feeling was that a detective show set in Hawaii was the right move to make right now.
On the surface, Magnum PI looked like just another 1980s action series. Fast cars, tropical scenery, and a charming lead with a perfect mustache. But the show had a layer of authenticity that most of its peers lacked, and that came straight from its creators. Donald P. Belisario, who co-created the series with Glenn A. Larson, had served in the U.S. Marine Corps before turning to television. His first-hand experience gave Magnum and his friends a credibility that other TV tough guys didn't always have. Instead of Hollywood writers trying to guess what military life might have been like, Belisario drew from what he knew. The camaraderie between Magnum, TC, and Rick wasn't just scripted banter. It was built on the unshakable loyalty of men who'd been through service together. Even the small details, like the casual way they referenced Vietnam, or the respect they showed for military tradition, came from a place of truth. That's why Magnum PI could pull off something rare, being a fun, escapist adventure series without ever mocking or cheapening the military experience. The characters' shared background explained their bond and gave depth to what could have been just another sunny detective show. It grounded the fantasy, the Ferrari, the estate, the adventures in paradise, in something real. The friendships felt earned because they were written by someone who understood that kind of brotherhood.
Number 2, CBS recycled an entire production setup. When Hawaii Five-0 wrapped after 12 seasons in 1980, CBS suddenly found itself with a problem and an opportunity. The network had spent years building an entire production infrastructure in Hawaii. Sound stages, equipment, local crews, and hard-won permits to film across the islands. Walking away from all that would have been throwing money into the ocean. So CBS did the smart thing. They recycled it. Instead of tearing everything down, they launched a brand new series right on top of the old framework, Magnum PI. This wasn't just about saving dollars, though. Hawaii Five-0 had already laid the groundwork, but CBS wasn't interested in repeating a procedural cop drama. They wanted something fresher, lighter, and more character-driven. Where Steve McGarrett wore suits and barked orders, Thomas Magnum strolled around in Hawaiian shirts, cracking jokes and chasing adventures. Same backdrop, completely different energy. It was television recycling at its finest. CBS inherited the best house on the block and decided to throw a whole new kind of party inside it. And the gamble paid off. Magnum PI looked lush and cinematic, thanks to the infrastructure that Five-0 built, but it felt brand new to audiences. CBS managed to get twice the value out of its Hawaiian investment, and in the process, delivered one of the most iconic shows of the decade. Number 1, the show ended with one of TV's most controversial finales.
A pint of stout.
Few shows have ended with as much debate as Magnum P.I. In fact, it technically had 2 finales, and both stirred up plenty of controversy. At the end of Season 7, in the episode Limbo, Magnum is shot and appears to die. The entire episode plays out like a supernatural journey between life and death, complete with Magnum narrating from beyond. Fans were stunned. For a while, it looked like CBS was going to close the book on one of TV's most beloved heroes by actually killing him off. But then came the twist. CBS renewed the series for 1 more season. That meant Magnum wasn't gone after all. The writers revived him, and in the true series finale, Resolutions, Magnum not only survives, but finds closure. He reconnects with his young daughter, makes peace with his past, and re-enlists in the Navy. It was an ending that managed to be both tragic and uplifting. Magnum died, and yet somehow, he also got his happy ending. The split reaction was immediate. Some viewers loved the boldness of the supernatural Limbo episode, and thought it gave Magnum unexpected depth. Others felt cheated by the bait and switch, frustrated that the emotional gut punch didn't stick. But whether you loved it or hated it, one thing is certain. Magnum P.I. went out on a note people never forgot. And in the crowded history of TV finales, being memorable is the ultimate victory.
And there you have it. 10 facts about Magnum P.I. that prove the show was just as fascinating behind the scenes as it was on screen. From Tom Selleck's dating game disasters to that unforgettable finale, Magnum was packed with surprises that had nothing to do with weekly mysteries or Ferrari chases. If you've made it this far, you're clearly as obsessed with 80s television as we are. So go ahead and smash that like button harder than Magnum slams the gas pedal leaving Robin's nest. And if you've got a favorite Magnum P.I. memory or some trivia we missed, drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear it. Just remember, somewhere out there, someone actually turned down Tom Selleck on the dating game. Twice. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the shows that defined our childhoods. The ones that made us believe adulthood might actually be pretty cool after all.